Hello and welcome to the Simply Race Stock Car Championship live here at Simply Race in Milton Keynes. My name's Callum Cripps. I'm joined here by EuroNascar driver Alex Sedgwick for Brax Racing this year. And we're going to be going through a 45-minute race live here at the Simply Race facility at Le Mans Bugatti circuit for round one of the championship. Basically, the cars, me and Alex actually helped set them up. So they're based on Xfinity NASCARs, basically tuned down a tiny bit to replicate the EuroNascars that run in the European series around Europe. So, around 500 horsepower, 450 or so, but they're more set up for circuit-based racing instead of the oval stuff that you normally see NASCAR associated with. So, Alex, if you want to tell us a bit more about the cars and how they handle, in a way.
Like you said, it's a mixture of an American NASCAR something like a road course race. So yeah, I mean, cheaper in chassis, solid rear end, loads of slides, 4-speed gearbox, no drive rails, no electronics. So it's a lot of fun. It's a challenging car to drive, so it should be quite a good race.
Yeah, hopefully, and you just did practice as well a moment ago and you were top of the time, so that's as we expect from the EuroNascar drive. So yeah, hopefully we should have some very veterans here and some newbies as well, which is really, really good to see. Hopefully it'll be all good. Obviously, the drivers will have to go through tyres and fuel during the race as well. There's no damage, thankfully, because I think if anybody had a collision, then it would really ruin their race. So, yeah, absolutely. So we'll definitely have to work on it. Mike's working on it, maybe. So anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to show you quickly a video about what Simply Race is about and how to get involved in championships if you want to come down here at the facility in Milton Keynes. Okay then, so welcome back to the live coverage of the United States the Simply Race Stock Car Championship live here at Simply Race Centre. As you can see, the cars are now on track for their 10-minute qualifying session. So at the moment, the cars are just warming up and getting a feel for the track and the conditions. So the track will also rubber in during the session as well. So the drivers will have the most amount of grip pretty much on the very last lap of the race. So then we'll see some times coming in as we go through the session. But we've got quite a few cars on track now then. So then we're just watching a few of the cars going around the back of the circuit. Okay, so Michael Balding at the moment then going around in his black and green livery. Heading down the back section of the circuit now, hard on the brakes into the chicane section, and just locking up the brakes a bit too much, then going straight on, using that recovery road there, just to get back on track. A bit of a slide, is he going to correct it? Nearly. So, as you may have told from these NASCARs, the brakes are not amazing, but it just means that they have to brake a tiny bit earlier for the corners as well, as is in real EuroNascar as well. So we're just looking at the last two corners of the circuit now. You can see Michael Balding there just taking his time around the back end of the circuit before accelerating out. A nice panning shot there as we've got on the Le Mans pit wall. And then he's going up towards turn 1 now, so he'll be pretty much just tapping the brakes, staying in 4th gear, going around turn 1, hugging the inside line onto the brakes quite quickly now. Let's see if he can make the apex here. Oh, just about misses it, but holds it together as he goes through the chicane. And underneath the bridge then as he swoops downhill where Alec McNish had his massive crash in the Audi a few years ago in the Le Mans 24 Hours. So okay then, so we're just talking about the numbers on the side of the car to identify who's in the car at the moment. But at the moment we're watching Callum James, who has a similar name to me, only it's a C, oh, mine's a C instead of a K. So it's good to see Callum joining us for the first round of the Super Race Stock Car Championship. And a nice red car there, looking very old school stock car. As you can see, they're all in Chevy Camaros as well. So. Nice fake exhaust out the back of that car. So then as he goes into the final few corners, he gets, very difficult, just, a nice 360 there. That was very nicely done, well done. 8 out of 10 from me and Mike back in the commentary booth. That was very impressive indeed. But so Callum then unfortunately steps his lap up, but Cedric goes fastest for the moment with Banwell 4/10 back, so quite close between the top few guys. Also got a 1:43 from De Castro as well, so Valentino then putting in a good effort into 3rd place he goes. So unfortunately Shamak Glodek you can see in 10th place, he hasn't turned up actually unfortunately for this first round, but I'm not sure what's happened there, but hope everything's all right with him. So Cedric then, the Brax EuroNascar driver for 2018 and 2019, as he's just signed for Brax for this year as well with his teammate Scott Jeff. So those two will be, Alex will be in Elite 1 for this year, and Scott will be in Elite 2. So it'll be great to see how those guys get on in their first few rounds of the championship. So Cedric's still on top then for the moment. And we're watching car number 11 as he goes around the back end of the circuit then. So that's Colin Talbot in fact. So Colin actually getting the livery that he asked for in the comments in the Facebook chat that he had earlier. Really wanted those colours, so luckily he's got them. And I'm hoping he'll be happy with that. He's down in 9th place at the moment, so not completely up to speed just yet, but I'm sure Colin will set some lovely lap times later on in the race. So just coming through the final section of the circuit now, then using all the curb on the outside and then getting the power on nice and quickly as he comes out the last corner. That's quite a tidy lap there from Colin. So that moves him up to a 1:46.1, so not a bad time at all. So then it's we've got a few comments on the Facebook on the YouTube feed. So as we're just checking up on them at the moment. So Ricky Bobby, I'm not sure who that is, saying what's with the annoying air horn. I think that's in the game actually, isn't it? We can't take it out unfortunately, but there is a air horn that sometimes goes off at the side of the circuit if they're in the spectator stands or whatever. So yeah, apologies for that. You may hear a little air horn, but that's definitely not us having a bit of fun back in the commentary booth. That's on the circuit itself. We're watching Jack Ashton. I can tell that from the purple livery that he's got, just going around the final section of the circuit now. And he's got a bit of a wiggle on there, had to correct a bit of oversteer, but gets on the power nicely. There's a good line out of that corner, in fact. So let's see if he can go any faster than 142.3. He may do, yeah, 142.0. So a good lap time from Jack Ashton there. That keeps him third place for the moment. And we've got a car coming into the pit lane as well, and spinning just about. It's a crazy tight pit lane, especially in these massive cars coming in. So somebody obviously changing tyres already. And now we're watching car number 6, Alex Cedric, and I'm sure that's his favourite colour as well, funnily enough. So he'll be really happy with that as he goes through turns 1 and 2, very slidey. And then accelerating out to he's on top at the moment with a 140.6, so about, well, a second quicker than everybody else at the moment, but still managing to compose himself as he goes through the first section of the circuit. Going into turn 2 now as well, getting a load of oversteer and trying to correct it, just going in a tiny bit too hot there. The thing is, as soon as you get a slide on, the tyres heat up as well, and they overheat very quickly in these cars, and it just means that you've got to be really, really silky smooth for the next few laps just to gather your composure together and go racing once again. But it just means you've got to cool down your tyres a tiny bit more for the first few laps. And obviously tyre wear is on as well, so every slide, every locking of the brakes or whatever will affect your tyre wear throughout the race, and it will make it very tricky for the drivers to manage over a 45-minute race. But I think the key element is to be smooth as possible and try and guide your car to make sure the tyres are absolutely fine. So Cedric then just making his way around the final few corners of the circuit now into the final corner. I'm not sure he's going to go fast this time. He was a bit of a scruffy lap, but we'll go on to another one and see how he gets on. We've still got 5 minutes left of qualifying, and everybody's pretty close together at the top end of the grid, especially the mid-pack battle is going to be very interesting to watch as they come through. Alex comes through turns 1 and 2, stretching over the curves and then accelerating out once again. So then I think the real interesting battle is going to be between from 2nd to 6th place. Well, 2nd to 7th in fact, as we got Colin Talbot as well doing a 146.1. So then we're just watching Cedric on a lap at the moment, just going around the back end of the circuit. And to rumble when we go racing. So then the drivers pull away for their formation lap, and we'll be doing a rolling start. So we're just seeing Colin Talbot there in the 11 car just pulling away as well. So just 9 cars on the grid. We do have 15 simulators here at Simply Race, but people seem to be very busy these days, unfortunately, but we'll see if we can get some more drivers in for round 2 of the championship. So then as the drivers follow the pace car then round through turn 1 and into turn 2, obviously the drivers have been briefed beforehand just to make sure they're nice and steady on the entrance to turn 2. You do need to be looking after your brakes and tyres during that time. So as everybody makes their way through there, safety car's quite slow at this moment in time, obviously through the tight section of the circuit. So then they'll line up 2 by 2, and then we will go green for the start of this race when they come round again. Obviously the drivers will be managing their fuel and tyres during the race as well, so it's going to be very interesting to see who and when makes pit stops and when they're going to do it. So then there's Bamwell on the outside then in the green machine, and Cedric on the pole in the nice very bright pink car. It's also nice to see Kim Ensign as well at the back of the grid there. He's in I think it's the other pink machine that we've got, a slightly lighter pink, so it's great to see him coming down here for the first time. So Colin Talbot, you can see in just a few cars back, we're watching Valentino Nicastro, in that very, very well vibrant multicoloured car that's just on your screen at the moment. So we're definitely not going to miss him anytime soon. It's nice to see all the CCR logos on the cars as well. So massive thanks to Mike for setting all the liveries up for us, and including my racing logo on there as well. So he's going to get very soon underway. Obviously the safety car lap is quite slow, but it gives the drivers time to warm up their brakes and tyres and get ready for the start of the race. Hello Sean on the feed as well, it's nice to see you here. Can't believe you can't be actually racing with us, but I'll let you off. But Sean King, obviously a regular here at Simply Racing, the Endurance Championship and the USSC Championship that we run here as well. So hopefully he can join us for round 2 of the championship then. So as we come around the final few corners, then the safety car will peel into the pit lane, and we will get racing very shortly then. So it's Cedric who lines up on the outside in the pink car in first place, with Josh Bamwell in second. So let's see how these guys get on when we go to the start of the race. The cars will go green now, and we are racing. So it's a good start from Cedric, and he gets away well away from Bamwell, who also follows him in turns quite close behind him, and Jack Ashton as they head up towards turn 1. And let's see if hopefully everybody makes it through here nice and clean. We've got Valentino in the car, so just going through there, and we've got a very late lunge up the inside from I think that's Colin Talbot, has made his way up to 4th place from pretty much the back of the grid. So fantastic to see him doing so well. We've got Michael Balding unfortunately gone off in the background, so not great from him for the start of this race. So unfortunately he'll have to spin round and get going again, but it's still Cedric that leads from Bamwell and Jack Ashton, and then Colin Talbot, an amazing start up to 4th place. So they make their way through turns 5 and 6. Very, very smooth indeed from all these guys so far. So very bright there, very extremely bright car, isn't it, from the number 12 machine. You might have to turn the brightness down in the screen a tiny bit as they get some bit of a wobble coming out of that corner. But Valentino gathers it all together and continues onwards. So let's see, the battle for the leaders is still quite close together for the moment. So we'll try and switch to the leaders and see how those guys are getting on. It's still 6/10. So this is your top 3 then. So it's Cedric leading from Bamwell and Jack Ashton, who, Cedric and Bamwell definitely went very wide coming out of that last few corners there, and that's allowed Jack Ashton to hang on to the back of them for the moment, and they've all seemed to have dropped Colin Talbot. Cedric goes very wide on the exit of the last corner. There's a bit of nudging from Josh Bamwell, but that means that Jack Ashton's able to capitalise on this and moves to the inside to try and get Bamwell up the inside into turn 1. Let's see how these two get on. It's going to be very, very tight. It's a very tricky corner in these cars, but it looks like Bamwell just holds on to that position for the moment, but then Jack Ashton very late on the brakes in turn 1. Great respect from these two drivers to get around this very, very tight section of the circuit, and then heading downhill, they're neck and neck, and it still looks like Bamwell has the inside line and has the advantage. This allowed Cedric to break away a tiny bit, but great side-by-side action, and has Cedric gone off? In fact, Cedric's gone off the circuit, so unfortunately he's dropped off the circuit, so he'll have to fight back, but that means that Bamwell now leads this race from Jack Ashton, and I think Cedric will be kicking himself for that a bit, but this is a battle for the lead now then, as we've still got Colin Talbot in 4th place ahead of now Callum Jones, and it looks like Valentino Nicastro has dropped back a tiny bit, but these two battling at the front, very different lines going through that back section of the circuit, but still they're pretty much neck and neck, and they've got Cedric now in the background who's going to be hunting them down, but Bamwell goes defensive, and Jack Ashton is going to go round the outside into the chicane. I think he's going to do it, and a great move from Jack Ashton to take the lead then away from Josh Bamwell. Amazing move round the outside that gave him the apex for that chicane. So then as they go through this section of the circuit, and Bamwell having a look at Jack Ashton but not managing to do anything, and to be fair to Cedric, even though he did bin it, he's catching up very, very quickly to these guys, and it's going to be a fantastic three-way battle for the lead then as they come up round the to complete another lap. Then we've got just over 40 minutes to go into turn 1. They'll be lifting in a tiny bit of brake as they go through here. So this is on board with, I think it was Kim Ensign on lap 1, so let's see what happened here. Did he just go up the inside of somebody? Oh, very, very slight, and unfortunately just tapped Michael Balding in the back, so I wonder if Kim Ensign's going to get a penalty for that. I'm not quite sure, but we actually span off at turn 2 as well, unfortunately. Not great from him, but we've now got a three-way battle for the lead then as we cut away from that overlay. Thanks for that, Mike. We've got Cedric looking very racy on the inside of Josh Bamwell. They're trying to throw it up the inside going into turn 5 but not managing to do it. We've now got pretty much 3 wide as they come into turn 6 and 7. So who's going to be the last on late break? Because I think it's going to be Bamwell, but then Jack Ashton has the inside line. Bamwell drifts out wide, and Cedric's going to pop up the inside here, and it's going to be very, very tight from these two drivers. They're leaning on each other, and they've got to give each other room. Thankfully they get away with it, but Cedric and Bamwell are very, very close together, and that's allowed Ashton to get back into the lead of the race. And Cedric trying it round the outside, and great commit from these two drivers. Great driving from Bamwell as well in these conditions to well, keep it on the grass, Jack, as they go through that section of the circuit. Josh Bamwell just holding on there, giving Alex Cedric a great bit of racing, and all these guys I think have done a bit of racing in their time. Jack Ashton most definitely has, and obviously we know Alex Cedric is racing in EuroNascar this year, so getting used to these cars. And Bamwell's got a very big wiggle as he comes out the last corner, and that's pretty much handed that place back to Cedric. So Cedric goes up to 15th place. Sorry. So I was looking on the stream as just seeing as Sean King just commenting about the 15 cars being able to race, but he pumps back into second position. Sorry. And you can see the brake is glowing red hot. They're actually very, very small on a NASCAR. They're no bigger than what you get in your normal Ford Focus. As we've got yeah, so that's how Cedric went off. Just got the rear all slided, and unfortunately on that off-cambered corner wasn't able to save it. So, but he's managed to recover really, really well so far. And just behind these guys, we've got Colin Talbot and Ben Bennyworth scrapping for 4th place at the moment, with Callum Jones just behind them as well. So great to see those guys coming down to race these cars in the first round of the Simply Race Stock Car Championship as well. So as they go round the back section of the circuit, Jack Ashton leads. Oh, Josh Bamwell got a massive wobble coming out of there, lucky to save it, and using all his skill to gather it up and trying to chase after Alex Cedric, but he just seems a bit too quick for him at this moment in time. Obviously these guys starting to settle down a bit now as we've got a 45-minute race to sit down and enjoy. So then as they go into the braking zone again, we've got contact in the backfield. So I think that's Callum Jones, and who else is that in the yellow car? I'm trying to spot the number, but unfortunately for those guys, they've gone off the circuit somewhere. So we'll have to review that. But that's very unfortunate. Also, somebody actually lost it on their own. They've gone to the grass on the braking zone. We'll get a replay of that for you coming up shortly. But yeah, it looks like unfortunately one of the cars just lost it in the braking zones. Oh, so the car number 7, this is Ben Bennyworth then, they're just getting on the grass and unfortunately doing God knows how many pirouettes, probably about 7 or 8, and then unfortunately collecting Callum Jones, but managed to gather it up and get on his way again. But that's still left Colin Talbot in 4th place for the moment then, and a tiny bit of a better gap to the leaders. But Cedric's dropped back as well, so Cedric's gone off the road again, I think. He won't be enjoying this too much, I reckon, but Colin Talbot is now up to 3rd place. I'm not sure what's happened to Cedric, but unfortunately he's fallen off the road somewhere, so we'll have to pick that up. But he's got even more work to do now, as we're still watching Jack Ashton, our leader, now. 1.8 seconds he's got on everybody else at the moment. And Josh Banwell again with a massive slide, and Banwell's gone as well now, so these guys really struggling with potentially just getting the tyres a tiny bit too hot. And this is the move then, Cedric re-overtaking Colin Talbot, and those guys getting on the way again, so a good move from Alex to regain himself and move back up again. But unfortunately for Banwell, just having a massive slide there and losing all that time that he had over Cedric, and now there's only a few seconds between them. So these guys, obviously these NASCARs, as we've set them up, they're nothing really like anything else that we race here at Simply Race. We've also got through from race control that we've got a drive through from Kim Ensign for hitting Michael Balding at the start of the race, as we saw. So Kim Ensign unfortunately getting a drive through penalty for that collision at the start of the race. Now 1 lap down. So yeah, as we were saying, these cars are quite hard to drive. We've allowed traction control mainly because these are Xfinity cars, and there is a very aggressive power surge when you go around above 7,000 RPM, which you normally get in Xfinity cars, but obviously not in EuroNascars. So to do that, we've had to basically have the traction control turned up a tiny bit more than normal, but it's still allowed to turn off. The drivers have full control of that. But it is available if need be. But also we've limited the power slightly, so the surge of the power that you get in an Xfinity car is not really experienced here. But we've got Banwell sliding very, very well. You can see how much he's overcooking his tyres a tiny bit. He's actually got smoke coming out the back of his car. He's slightly overheating something on it, maybe the engine or the diff, but slightly over revving maybe. But you can see some of the smoke coming out the back of that car as it accelerates out. But it's the problem with these cars, if you have a tiny bit of a wiggle, you overheat your tyres slightly, and then after that it's a real difficult to get the tyre temps back down again to working temperature. So it's really best for the drivers to drive at 80% really, and just manage their tyres and manage their fuel as well towards the end of the race. So we've also got, I think Michael Balding unfortunately is spun off somewhere on the circuit, and he's dropped back down to 8th place, so hopefully he'll be able to regain his composure and start all over again. You can see how far Cedric's been able to break away from this train now. So we've got Colin Talbot, Josh Banwell and Callum Jones all in a line here as they go around the back end of the circuit. So this is what happened to Kim Ensign then a few moments ago, just losing it going around turns 6 and 7, I believe that is. So just and reversing as well. So making sure he gets well out of the way of everybody else before getting back onto the circuit once again. We've got Colin Talbot and Josh Banwell. Colin, I think, just messed up his braking zone there a bit, and that means Banwell's been able to find a way past Colin Talbot then, who's in the just off the podium positions. But Jack Ashton at the moment is starting to extend his lead slightly, even though Cedric is now starting to claw some time back. He's got a 14-second lead at the moment after Cedric having a few major offs. I think the only person that really hasn't had an off is Jack Ashton himself. So Jack's doing really, really well at the moment. You can see Colin just messing up his braking zone there a tiny bit and having to straddle over the curbs, but I think he'll get away with that without a penalty. So there's then come round the back end of the circuit now. Drivers being nice and smooth and control with their cars. And that gap from Cedric and Ashton still holding steady at around the 14-second mark. We've got a great mid-pack battle though with Josh Banwell, who again has gone slightly wide. Obviously the brakes on these cars not designed for heavy braking zones, so just like in the real EuroNascar, you have to brake extremely early for the corners and be super, super smooth all the way through. So then, as we're watching these guys then go around the last section of the circuit, you can see Colin just missing the apex there, using all the circuit a tiny bit more just to get onto the power nice and early, and a good exit from him as well. So as they go on to lap 8 then for these guys, Jack Ashton actually extending his lead over Alex Cedric for the moment. So then as they go into the heavy braking zone into turn 2, then let's see if Colin can make the apex this time. Yeah, he does just about. And clattering over the curb slightly as he runs a tiny bit wide on the exit, and that's going to play into the hands of Callum Jones, who's just in the red car just behind him. So as these guys, nice panning shot through turns 4, and then using all the curb on the exit. Callum Jones was speaking to him a tiny bit earlier, only been down here to the Simply Race facility a few times, but really getting the hang of these NASCARs that are made like EuroNascars. And showing his skill as he tries to put some pressure on Simply Race veteran Colin Talbot. Obviously Colin racing in the Cam Sport team in the Simply Race Endurance Series, as well as the USSC Championship that we run here. So Colin really, really experienced in the Simply Race Sims. So then as he heads into the braking zone, using all that curb on the inside, and you can see how smooth these drivers have to be just going through this back end section of the circuit. In the high speed stuff, these cars do seem to be quite a bit more settled, but there are a few quite tight corners around here where obviously the cars are quite heavy. They have to muscle them around in second gear and try and get on the power as smoothly as possible to avoid any slidey moments. But you can see Callum Jones are going a tiny bit wide on the exit, but still managing to regain himself. We're looking from the back of Colin Talbot's car. You can see on the bottom right hand side of your screen. So then Jack Ashton, who races in the MG Metro Drayton Manor Cup as well, as we see Colin just missing his braking zone a tiny bit there and gathering it back together again. But so Jack does his actual racing as well as racing a bit on iRacing as well in the BSR MX5 Championship as well. You can see him on the bottom right hand of your screen now in the purple car. Obviously he races for Team Purple Helmets in real life in the MG Metro Cup, so it's only fitting that he has the purple car as well for this championship. So Jack Ashton then doing a fantastic job out front at the moment, being really smooth and precise and managing these cars to perfection. And we've got Cedric now 18 seconds back. So let's see if Cedric can try and make up some of his time in the pit stops as well, which are to come around halfway through the race as well. Drivers will have to manage their fuel and tyres to the end of the race. So then we're watching Callum Jones at the moment in the 10 machine, just going through, where's this back end of the circuit, so this is turns, I think 9 and 10. You can see those massive exhausts out the back, which are actually fake, they're just part of the bodywork. The actual real exhaust is on the side of the cars, in fact, so you can see it just underneath the number board. Oh, and we've got Colin Talbot just missing his braking zone there ever so slightly and going quite wide, and that's allowed Callum Jones now to move up into third place. So what's happened to Banwell then? Banwell's gone off the road somewhere, and you can see him in the green car. So this is Michael Balding in his livery, just coming out of one of the corners and lighting up the rear end, and unfortunately just flipping the barrier there. No harm done, and he'll continue on his way. So then as he exits the chicane then and go on to another lap. It's now Callum Jones in third place, so Callum doing an excellent job and keeping the race, well, keeping his driving nice and tidy. So go around the back section of the circuit then. Onto the brakes, you can see the cars dip, and that's the only real way you can tell they're braking. Obviously these NASCARs, they don't have any brake lights, so the only real way to tell is the actual body language of the car. When the nose dips like that, you definitely know they've hit the braking zones. So then it's Jack Ashton now on lap 10 with Cedric, starting to close that gap back a tiny bit, in fact. So this is what happened to Josh Bamwell then, as he goes round, I think this is turn 4, and just got a massive load of oversteer, and unfortunately has to spin himself around. Did a good job of recovering it and let the other two cars go, who actually stayed on the circuit, and then he has some work to do now to regain that final podium position. So then as these guys come through the final section of the circuit around this off-camera corner, and Callum Jones unfortunately has lost it as well on the inside on the grass, so he'll have to concede that place to Colin Talbot, who's now back up into P3. And it's looking very, very tricky out there. Obviously the track is rubbering in as well, so the drivers will be experiencing some changing conditions as the track gets more rubbered in. So then as they brake into the first couple of corners once again, obviously the Le Mans section of the circuit where they use the Le Mans 24 hour underneath the Dunlop Bridge, and then down the hill, and they will fade away into the infield, the Bugatti section of the circuit. Obviously if you carry on straight down there, you get to the Mulsanne Straight, where the famous Le Mans 24 hours is held. Well, it's not held, it's ran on really, as the street section of that circuit. And if you haven't been to Le Mans before, I highly recommend you definitely go for it. So we've got Colin Talbot, just getting a tiny bit of a wobble on the exit of that corner, and conceding the place to Josh Bamwell once again, so he's up into third once again. So then we're just having a look at Callum Jones as well, as we've got car number 7, that's Ben Bennyworth, running in 6th place at the moment. Very bright machine. You can hardly see the number on the side of it, it's so bright, but definitely you can never say you never saw him coming. So as he jumps onto the brakes head into the chicane section, using all of the curbs, just missing them sausage curbs. Nicely done by Ben. And then accelerating out once again and onto the brakes into this second gear sequence of hairpins. You can see the track starting to rubber in a tiny bit more. You can see how shiny it is with the sunlight on the surface. And then onto the brakes once again, doing the double right-hander onto the last section of the circuit, and accelerates out once again. So Ashton then still doing a fantastic job out front at the moment. I'll try and have a look at his lap times. If you want to have a look at all the drivers' lap times and what they're currently doing at the moment, you can go onto liveraces.simplyrace.com and you'll be able to have a look at all the live telemetry that we're seeing back here at the Simply Race Centre. Oh, sorry, it's simplyrace.liveraces.com, so the other way around there. But yeah, they'll be able to see where all the drivers are on circuit at that moment in time, and what lap times they're doing and what sector times they're doing as well. So then as we carry on, then we're 24 minutes away from the checkered flag, so around about halfway through this race so far, and still it looks like Jack Ashton is doing a fantastic job out front. Which is great to see. We've got a nice little battle here for this is between Callum Jones and Ben Bennyworth. So Ben's managed to jump up to 4th, and these guys are going to be battling it out for that 4th position. Then we've got Bamwell as well as Colin Talbot. I think may have had a pit stop, and he's dropped back down to 8th place. So remember, these guys, even though it looks like they are a long way off the pace, they will have made pit stops as well potentially. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go throughout the race. Obviously the tyre wear and fuel is on as well, so these guys will be trying to manage their fuel and tyres as best as possible. So then if you want to get involved in the championship, obviously head over to the Simply Race Stock Car Championship page on Facebook, where you can see all about the series and why we're running it. So a bit of a background into how this all started. My name's obviously Callum Cripps, if you haven't heard of me before, which you probably haven't. But I'm planning to race in the EuroNascar series in 2019, and partnering with Simply Race, I've managed to set up this sim league to try and raise a tiny bit more awareness and get people involved in the championship. And obviously motor racing itself in real life is extremely expensive, and basically for people who can't afford to go racing, me especially, I find sim racing is a very, very good way of still keeping my racing fix. So along with the guys here at Simply Race, we've been able to create this championship where it's a 4-round championship in the first half of this year before I hopefully will be entering the EuroNascar series for 2019. So on the bottom right hand side of your screen then you can see the actual live races, telemetry and all the gear that you're able to see if you go onto liveraces.simplyrace.com. And basically always we've got a spin from Michael Balding as well, so he's in the black and green machine just on your screens right now. So luckily letting Jack Ashton go by before continuing onwards. So, but yeah, you're able to see all the live telemetry and the lap times from the drivers. So let's have a look at the lap times in fact from Jack Ashton last time around. So his best lap time is it's very close for best lap time at the moment, with it swaying just in Jack Ashton's favour of a 1:42.5. Cedric is 5:04. And then Cedric is just back from that with a 1:42.515. So there's only 9 thousandths of a second between the fastest laps for the top two drivers. We've then got the current lap times coming in around the 1:43s to 1:44 mark as the tyre wear is starting to potentially take its toll a bit more on the drivers. So then we've got a few other interesting rounds coming up after this one. Obviously this is round one of the championship. We've also got Brands Hatch coming next time out for round two. That'll be held on the 10th of March, which I'm sure we'll be able to, we will be streaming live, and I hope that we'll have a few more cars as well on the grid. We've got a replay here. This is car number 14. So this is Kim Ensign, unfortunately, just getting all out of shape and having to rejoin the circuit there, and just making sure that he gets out of Callum Jones's way. Then as he hits he just got a tiny bit too eager on the steering input coming through turn one, but he carries on nicely. So Kim, who's never actually raced here before, so we'll give him a bit of credit for jumping straight into these cars after just having a few minutes practice and having a go. We've got quite a smoky car there. That's car number 11, Colin Talbot, who's currently running in 8th place. And I'm guessing that's either just potential a bit of engine overheating or maybe brakes as well. So, and this is Kim Ensign as well, just finding his way around the circuit there, potentially coming into the pit lane, is he? Yes, he is. So Kim coming in for potentially a pit stop into the very tight pit lane. So then Jack Ashton still leading the way in the purple machine, 20 seconds ahead of Alex Cedric for the moment, with Josh Banwell a few more seconds back. So as I was saying, we've got round two of the championship coming from Brands Hatch next time out, next month. So that'll be very interesting to see how the drivers get on around the Brands Hatch circuit. And then third round on the calendar, we've got Hockenheim, which is another EuroNascar track that they do towards the end of the year. I think it's one of the last rounds. In fact, it's Hockenheim, then Zolder, and funnily enough, our fourth round is Zolder as well. So replicating hopefully the rounds that I will be doing in the EuroNascar series this year. So Jack Ashton then doing a very, very good job up front. You can just see how smooth he is through this section of the circuit, and really, really showing how talented he is behind the wheel. Now it looks like Cedric is potentially in the pit lane, so Cedric then in the number 6 machine changing tyres as well. The car's going up and he's changing tyres, so it may be putting some more fuel in as well, so Cedric will have to manage that. We've got Kim Ensign unfortunately off the track again, but rejoining and not having any problems at all. So then Kim Ensign just going around the back end of the circuit now. We've got a few close battles in the middle pack, so we've got Bamwell and Cedric. Well, Bamwell's just taken second place off Cedric, but Cedric, I believe, is now back on the road potentially, so we'll have to have a look at that. So we maybe have a look at Bamwell and Cedric, so they'll be very, very close together. So you can see Bamwell then on an external shot, and he's just circulated quite nicely, so yet to pit still. You can see Jack Ashton there, and here's Josh Bamwell. So then Jack Ashton still having not pitted yet, so Bamwell I'm pretty sure has pitted at the moment and is still hanging around the podium places. We've got Cedric as well, who's just come out of the pits, so Cedric, having put some new tyres on, is going to be very, very fast indeed, so we'll keep an eye on his lap times, and he's closing very quickly on Josh Bamwell, so we'll keep an eye on the pink machine for the moment. He's clattering the curves as he goes through the chicane. So then as they go through this section of the circuit, and a nice camera angle there as we've got a panning shot as they go around the two quite off-camber hairpins before making their way back onto the last section of the circuit. So Bamwell's now looking like he's in the pit lane, so Bamwell then in the pits, and let's see if he's going to take tyres and fuel. So Cedric then is going to go chasing after Jack Ashton, who's still yet to pit, so these guys going quite late on their fuel. We're expecting it around the 20-minute mark, but these guys are really, really stretching the fuel and making it last very, very well indeed. So Cedric out on a new, fresh set of tyres and a bit more fuel in as well, so it's going to be great to see if he can close that gap to Jack Ashton now as they go through the first section of the circuit. Jack Ashton is actually quite far ahead. He's actually almost in sector 3. Cedric then leaning on that car as he goes through the middle section of the circuit, and this is coming out the pit lane, so that's Kim Ensign then just coming out the pit lane along with Josh Bamwell, and Kim car smoking a tiny bit as he comes out of the pit lane and goes a tiny bit wide on exit, and that allows Bamwell to just sweep through. So then Bamwell, I'm guessing he's taken tyres as well, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he gets on. We're going to imagine seeing, as the cars are now a bit less on fuel, some stellar lap times from these guys. So Cedric then looking very, very racy as he heads out around the back end of the circuit. Ashton still staying out for a few more laps then. Cedric going around sector 3, holding it nice and steady as they go through the last couple of corners, using all that curb and a tiny bit more on the exit. We've got, that's Jack Ashton there on the mini screen that we've got, the overlay just in the right hand side of your screen. So then let's see if Jack is going to pit this time around. I don't think he is, no, he's not near to the pit lane just yet. He's in sector 2, so some of these corners do look quite similar, but Jack's still in the middle part of the circuit now as Alex goes on, just going on to the Bugatti loop now, coming off of the main Le Mans circuit and into the infield. So then Ashton then, is he going to potentially dive into the pit lane this time around? He's in sector 3, so let's see if he can do just that. Cedric's just getting past Colin Talbot, who is in 7th place, and Jack stays out for another lap then, so can Jack potentially make his fuel last all the way to the end? We'll have to see, but Cedric, you can see the brake disc glowing there as he hits the brakes nice and hard going into that corner and just taking another lap on Colin Talbot. Unfortunately, Colin hasn't had the best of races so far, but hopefully as he warms more to these cars over the championship, we'll see him right up there. He was in 3rd place earlier, to be fair to him, so he's doing really, really well. But unfortunately, a few hiccups have led to him dropping down the order slightly, along with Michael Balding. So then as Cedric makes his way out the final corner and onto another lap. And he has taken quite a lot of time out of Ashton actually over these last few laps. So let's see what kind of lap times Cedric is doing at the moment. Well, he's just done a very, very quick lap indeed, a 1:41.0. So that was extremely quick from Cedric. He was gone purple in the middle section, then green in the other two. So a 1:41, while Jack was hanging around the 1:45. So at Cedric at this moment, with his tyres as they are, stellar pace from him so far at the moment. We've got Kim Ensign just out of shot again, unfortunately just going off the road there at turn 4 even, sorry. So Cedric then really on a charge to try and close that gap down from Jack Ashton. So let's see if he can do it. We've got a great battle between these two real racing drivers, and Cedric then just missing the first apex slightly and lining himself up for the second apex and absolutely firing his way out of it. So really good drive out the corner there from Cedric, and the gap is really coming down. Last time around Alex was almost 4 seconds quicker than Jack on the road, so Jack really then managing his tyres. Maybe he can even potentially get to the end of the race, we'll have to see. I highly doubt it, but maybe he may be able to just save his tyres and just fuel up, and that will save him a lot of time in the pit stops. We've also got a few other drivers putting in some personal bests. We got, I think that was Callum Jones just going, oh no, sorry, it was Valentino Nicastro putting in a let me just find it again, 1:42.6, so a very quick time from him. We've got a slow motion replay of Kim Ensign going for a little pirouette there, and a nice slow-mo action replay then, and just unfortunately losing it on the exit of the corner. But continuing onwards and no harm done to him or anybody else. We're watching Colin Talbot now in the number 11 machine. Colin's in 7th place at the moment, just going through turn 1 and onto the brakes, nice and hard on the brakes for getting to that apex nicely of turns 2 and 3. It's a nice off-cambered corner, as turns 3, as you go up over the curb on the inside, and that actually helps rotate the car slightly, but if you do it right, you can really get it up on 2 wheels as well, and makes the car nice and floaty. We've got another few more quicker laps coming in, so a 1:41.9 was done by Josh Banwell last time around, so quick lap time from him now that he's got some fresh tyres on as well. So those guys trying to chase down the race leader Jack Ashton at the moment. We've got car number 12, this is Valentino Nicastro, just going off there at turns 5. So just gathering it all up together and continuing onwards nice and smooth. And you see Colin Talbot then just going around the back end of the circuit. So the gap's still coming down. Cedric now 33 seconds behind Jack Ashton. It was a lot more than that, so really bringing it down. And you can see Colin Talbot taking it nice and steady as he goes through this part of the circuit. Hi to Carol on the feed, who's just catching up on the race as well here at the Simply Race facility here in Milton Keynes for the first round of the Simply Race Stock Car Championship. So you can see the nice brandish logo that Mike was able to create for this championship, with the Callum Cripps Racing logo in the middle of it as well. So massive thanks to him for all his efforts and work that he's done over the past few weeks on helping advertise the championship and doing all the imagery for it as well. He's also doing these fantastic, very bright liveries with the Callum Cripps logo on the front of them as well. So it's great to see these cars out in force and looking very bright. You might have to turn the brightness down on your phones a tiny bit if it gets a tiny bit too bright, but still they look awesome in this afternoon light. We've got another very quick lap time, 1:44, just popped in personal best for Josh Banwell, 1:41.667, so really quick from Banwell. Now he's starting to pedal a lot quicker, and we've got Colin Talbot just going for a spin there, just doing a tiny bit of a pirouette and hopefully getting on his way again. And Jack Ashton, I can't believe he's still staying out for this long. He's got 8 minutes to go on the clock. And let's see if he can just coast it home to the end. So as Colin goes around the first section of the circuit, you see the Le Mans Stadium in the background. He's gone for a spin again. Unfortunately, he's overheated his tyres a bit too much and he's going for a few spins. But let's try and focus on the race leaders and see if that gap is coming down. So we're watching car number 12 at the moment. This is Valentino Castro in 5th place. That's Josh Bamwell. And he's closing down on Ben Bennyworth, who's just ahead. So we'll keep an eye on this battle then for the final podium places. We've also got Michael Balding in the middle of these two. Unfortunately, Michael not quite getting to grips with these cars and having a few moments out on track, but still his car looks absolutely awesome with his own personal livery being added to it. So really nice effort there from him. Hopefully we'll see him back a lot more at the Simply Race facility. So as those 4 cars then come around the back end of the circuit, we've got the battle between Josh Bamwell and Ben Bennyworth to enjoy. So that's Cedric then, who's still closing the gap down to Jack Ashton as they come around the back end of the circuit. And Cedric having a big moment there, just trying to gather it up. He managed to do so really, really well. So now we've got a nice tasty little battle here. We've got about 5 cars all together coming down the back end of the circuit. And I think Josh Bamwell, unfortunately, has had a bit of a moment. We've got a spin from Ben Bennyworth. He's going to spin in the front of everybody else and he's going to get collected. No, he just managed to gather it up. And you can see the marshal waving the green flag after the accident to say there's no more incidents after this. But unfortunately for Ben Bennyworth, he's lost that podium position to Josh Bamwell. And there was a very, very close action there in the background. We saw Michael Balding just ever so slightly getting in the way of Josh Bamwell, who I don't really think he noticed he was there. But unfortunately for those guys, just getting very, very close together. And we've got Colin Talbot as well, just ahead of these guys, who's battling away with Michael Balding. In fact, we've got 2 battle for position here, even though they're on different laps. So we've got Michael Balding and Colin Talbot fighting over 7th place, and Josh Bamwell, who's now passed Ben Bennyworth for 3rd. So let's see how these guys get on. We're on board with Colin Talbot, looking at the back of Josh Bamwell's car. So very, very difficult conditions then for these drivers as their tyre wear starts to go down. Obviously the track gets more rubbered in. You can see an onboard shot, so this is what the driver sees inside the pod, and you can see just how much lock they're putting on. So this is on board with Colin Talbot, I believe, and we'll go on board for a lap then with him. You can see his inputs as he goes into turn 1, nice and smooth there for Colin, onto the brakes. Keep braking nice and smooth, get to that apex. That's it, good job. Really, really smooth. You can see how his inputs are so smooth and technical on the wheel. And then onto the brakes once again, trying to master that turn in and just using the rear of the car just to rotate slightly, and did a really nice job coming out that corner. A tiny bit of oversteer, so you'd expect from these V8 monsters. And then braking into turn 5 now, then trying to get the car rotated underneath him. Tiny bit of a wobble and then accelerating out. So you can see just how precise you need to be with these cars, and looking very, very cool. You can also use all your instruments available too. You can see how hot your oil temperature is getting. As you can see in the background, in fact, you can see in the mirror, Michael Balding is just behind him as well. So that's one thing to have a look at on the stream then. Amongst all the action, we've got Cedric closing down on Jack Ashton, but still managing to keep the gap over, well, nice and constant, but the gap is coming down quite rapidly. You can see just how smooth Colin Talbot is being on the wheel. It's really impressive to see his inputs and just how smooth he's being now coming into the tighter parts of the circuit. Let's see how Michael Balding gets on. This is on board with Michael Balding looking back on Colin Talbot. So you can see, and also that little mirror that you have on the left hand side of your screen near the A pillar of the car, that is actually the real mirrors that you get in NASCAR, and when I drove one I was scarcely believe you can see anything out of them, because you really can't. The only way you can really see is by feeling someone hit the side of you or push you down the straight. So Very, very difficult cars to see out of, even though they are massive. They're bigger profile than a Range Rover. And Michael Balding very, very hard on the brakes and trying to get the car stopped and just overshooting it slightly, but hopefully he'll try and regain himself, and don't think he'll get a penalty for that. But obviously we have race directors to investigate as well, but didn't gain any time, I don't think, in just cutting that thing. As Jack Ashton is into the pit lane then, so 3 minutes to go, and Jack Ashton is into the pit lane. Does this mean that Cedric is going to take the lead? We're going to find out, as Jack must have been extreme fuel saving, but doesn't manage to do so, as Michael Balding gets past Colin Talbot then for that 7th position. And I think Cedric is going to take the lead here. He comes out of the last corner and goes past Jack Ashton then with 2 minutes 40 to go. Actually, Jack's got moving again, has he? No. Okay, so yeah, he is moving again. He did a tiny fuel stop, but Cedric has got back into the lead after putting some amazing laps in on fresh tyres. You can see Ben Bennyworth just coming out of the pit lane now. But Jack Ashton, unfortunately, has had to miss this race win by 2 minutes and, well, 2.5 minutes, in fact. But has really spiced up the end of this race. So Cedric then, the Brax EuroNascar driver for 2019, looking set for his first win in the Simply Race Stock Car Championship, his most coveted win yet, I'm sure, out of the many that he's had over his racing career. But Jack Ashton must be absolutely kicking himself. He must have worked so hard to try and save the fuel to the end of the race, but unfortunately just couldn't do it, just couldn't manage it. And that has handed, it seems, the win to Cedric with 1 minute 40 to go, so we'll get one more lap in after this. But Jack's fuel saving must have been extreme over that period, and he must have been stressing so hard as well. He was discussing with me earlier how much he doesn't like calculating how much fuel to put in the car during race. Obviously he just wants to focus on the driving, but in this you unfortunately have to do a bit of both. So then as Cedric then using all of his real life racing skill then as he comes through the back end of the circuit and letting the car flow nicely as he goes through sector 3. And then with 1 minute 10 on the clock then, this will be the final lap of the race. Jack Ashton unfortunately 12 seconds back after having making that very late pit stop. God, he 2 more laps he needed, but unfortunately he just couldn't quite manage it. And you can see Josh Banwell there just in the right hand side of the screen, the mini little screen that we've got, the overlay. So he's fighting it out for that 3rd position. It looks like it's going to be Cedric, Ashton and Banwell as our top 3, with Valentino Nicastro, who's made a quite impressive comeback actually in 4th place after being quite far down and out. Unfortunately fortunately he's been able to claw his way back up to 4th place again, and it looks like a lot of people struggling with tyres now. We've got a few cars off at turn 5. We've got Kim Ensign, who potentially may have run out of fuel as well, it looks like. But we're watching Cedric go around the back section of the circuit now then, and he's looking to have his first win as the timer counts down to 0. So then as he goes into the final few corners of this first race, then it's going to be checkered flag for Cedric when he comes across the line. And Jack Ashton, I'm sure he'll be kicking himself, but still a really interesting strategic battle between these two. Cedric pitted very early on in this race, and Ashton pitted only 1 or 2 laps ago, so he managed to string the fuel out, but it just wasn't enough. 45 minutes just wasn't enough for him to make the fuel last that long. But Cedric coming out of the final corner then, and he's going to claim his first win, gives a big power slide on the way out. First round of the Simply Race Stock Car Championship goes to Alex Cedric, and congratulations to him. He's done a fantastic job at sticking some fresh tyres on, and that's really what bought him all that time over Jack Ashton, who I think just had a splash and dash and is still on the same tyre set. But Jack Ashton comes through in 2nd place, and